This lesson is about one of the most obvious ideas that I've ever had, and it's certainly not my idea, yet the one that has had the biggest effect on other people, at least in terms of the reaction. And where the story sort of starts is, well, it probably starts when I was about 8 years old, when my father, who was an entrepreneur, told me that he did everything in his life to avoid working with people who were assholes, and when he gets involved with them, to avoid them at all costs. So this is like one of the oldest ideas that I've ever heard of. And sort of fast forwarding, I've always been interested in this notion of the no asshole rule. To, I guess, when I was a young assistant professor, we had this amazing faculty meeting that I'll recall, where we're trying to decide what faculty members to hire. And there was one guy who was extremely accomplished, but was known as a jerk. And so a member of my department, I believe his name was Bob Carlson, said, I don't care if this guy won the Nobel Prize, I don't want to have any assholes here to ruin our department. So that sort of was floating around my mind for a few years. And every now and then, when I was working with a startup company or another company, I'd sort of hear this notion that, that we should do all that we can to avoid hiring assholes in this organization. And even a few of them would put it down as a rule. So then I sort of forgot about it. And then I got a call actually from a woman named, or an email, I guess, a woman named Julia Kirby, who said, do you have any ideas for like a little essay for the Harvard Business Review? So I wrote this little essay on the no asshole rule. And actually the way I wrote her the note initially was, I want to write an essay on something called the no asshole rule, but you guys at Harvard Business Review are way too conservative to publish the word asshole in the Harvard Business Review. So I wrote the essay working some with Julie, and it had the word asshole appear, I believe, I haven't gone back and counted now, about 8 or 9 times. And in fact, I put it in more times than I really wanted, on the theory they would cross it out all but maybe once, but then they left them all in. So to my amazement, the Harvard Business Review publishes this no asshole rule, which essentially says 3 things. 1, you should avoid hiring assholes when you can. 2, more importantly, you shouldn't allow people to get away with it. And 3, it had a little creative twist at the end, that there was an argument that maybe you should have just one asshole in your organization, because there's a literature on deviance which says that when you've got one person who's the oddball, actually everybody else is better because they see how not to behave. And the whole literature on deviance is actually fairly fascinating. There's also a related literature on littering. It actually turns out that people are less likely to litter into a setting that has one piece of garbage than none, because the norm violation, if you will, is clear. And it's the same thing with any sort of behavior. So if there's one person in your office who's a total jerk, there's an argument you might want to leave just that one person. The problem is when everybody becomes jerks.